So the first team that I think is really on the brink of becoming a relevant team in the NBA again is the Phoenix Suns. And this is not just a product of them receiving the number one pick and selecting DeAndre Ayton, but more so looking at the pieces they're going to have surrounding him and how they all fit together. So the first thing that I think the Suns really need to do this summer, and it's something I think they'll be able to get done, is to really work on the progression of Josh Jackson. So one thing about Josh Jackson that he struggled with mightily was making shots off the dribble. And there's some promising pieces at the end of the season where it really looked like he was getting comfortable and starting to figure things out. So here's an example, a little switch right here, then a step back three. This isn't a shot I would expect Josh Jackson to take a bunch, but it shows the potential of a guy that can get his shot up a little bit easier than he did for the beginning parts of the year. I mean, look at all that separation he got on that step back. Now, obviously, this is a bigger guy and Patrick Patterson on him, but as we look through the different games that he's had, Josh Jackson has consistently been playing the four more and more as the year went on, and in that was able to expose some of these mismatches. So it will be important for Josh Jackson to continue to work on that in the offseason, get a lot physically stronger. I think he's trying to add about 8 to 10 pounds, and in doing so, he'll be able to more take advantage of those mismatches when he's playing the four, but also kind of overpower smaller guys when he's playing on the perimeter. Speaking of playing on the perimeter, an area where Josh Jackson's heavily underrated is as a passer and playmaker. Now, we didn't see that much last year. He only averaged about 1.5 assists, but he's really skilled at making plays for others. Right here we see a little dump down pass. At Kansas, when he was playing the small ball four, he was very good at making these types of plays. Attacking the basket here, getting it down, getting a layup. The thing that I think Suns fans need to be patient with Josh Jackson is this year as a rookie, it's not always easy to transition into playing your type of basketball and being comfortable in what you're doing. So I think as the game slows down for Josh Jackson, these are going to be plays that you're going to see a lot more of. There's been some talk about him trying out playing a little bit of point guard in the summer. I don't really know if I'm a big fan of him playing the point guard, but in certain lineups that are guard heavy, he can make plays like this. It'll be a lot easier for everyone else on the court. So when we're looking at this lineup, right now, I think Josh Jackson's penciled in as a four-man. I think that could change, and personally what I would like to see more is if we took T.J. Warren out of this spot, put the rookie Mikal Bridges at the three, and brought T.J. Warren off the bench. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because the spacing was really messed up last year. Josh Jackson only shot in the 20s from three. Obviously having Ayton who can stretch it a little bit will help, but having a 3-4 where neither of them can shoot is not going to be beneficial. Despite T.J. Warren averaging career highs around 19 points a game, he's a lot more of a score-first guy that doesn't really stretch the court at all with his shooting ability. So I think if you put Bridges in here as a 3-and-D guy, a guy that can make open shots, that'll make the spacing a lot easier for a guy like Devin Booker. So when we talk about the spacing and how this will open things up, I'm looking at situations like this. Now here, Booker's going to drive on a mismatch right here against Karl-Anthony Towns and kick it at the corner. It'll be an open three, and Marquise Chris will hit this. But when we're looking at the reasons why having Mikal Bridges in the starting lineup as opposed to T.J. Warren would be beneficial, it's really about this help right here. So we see right here, T.J. Warren's out here. Andrew Wiggins, if he was a little more aggressive here, could be all the way in the paint, and that wouldn't be a risk of Warren hitting this shot. Gibson's in the right spot at help side, especially with Chris being an all-right three-point shooter. He can make them, and Teague is able to help off of Ulis here. So what happens a lot of times is Devin Booker, as a guy who's a high-volume scorer, as a guy who can get his own shot, is really the only one that the defenses need to pay attention to. So here when he drives, Gibson has a right help, and Chris is going to hit this. But having Mikal Bridges in there would help in a number of ways. And here's an example of how. Mikal Bridges is a knockdown spot-up jump shooter. I mean, we see This is just a simple, really similar kick-out play. Closeout's kind of low, and he's going to have time, but he's going to be a guy who shoots high 30s to low 40s from three throughout his NBA career. It's a consistent shot, especially off the catch and shoot. And when you have a playmaker like Devin Booker, having guys around him that can make shots, make open shots, and really demand the respect of the defense is going to be key. Now, here again, when Devin Booker had the ball for really the last 2 seasons, there's so much attention that is put on him that other guys really had to find ways to step up, and they really haven't. Devin Booker right here is going against one of the top defensive teams in the Celtics with Marcus Smart on him. And he's going to drive. He's going to get away with a pretty significant push-off right here, hitting Marcus Smart in the face. And he's going to get separation and hit this shot. So you think solid possession. But when you go back and look at where the defense is at, right now, Jaylen Brown's about to have help kind of talking to Morris here. Kyrie can sag in because it's a tough skip pass and he can recover. There's really no fear of Tyson Chandler right now getting to the basket. If he gets it, he's not a great finisher against any type of contact or pressure here. So Al Horford, it's really smart to be where he's at. Now, he does back off a little bit to get back, but all the eyes are on Booker, and there's really no one on the court right now to make him pay. And I think that's where having DeAndre Ayton on the court is going to be huge for Devin Booker and really for the Suns in general. Because if you look at even this play right here, just to give an example of if Ayton were in the same spot that Tyson Chandler was in, what could potentially happen? It's just going to be a simple backdoor lob. And Ayton not only has the athleticism, but the timing and strength to finish over and through contact. And having that ability is something that is going to force defenses to really help off. And we saw in the last example with Al Horford being able to pretty much double-team Devin Booker there. If you have DeAndre Ayton as a roll man, you're going to have to account for him, and there's going to have to be more help on the other side. Now, as exciting as it is to see Devin Booker, seemingly go 1-5 is what seemed to happen a lot last year, it's going to help to have a guy like DeAndre Ayton who can get the ball on the block, make a move, and put up points that way. Right now you got Marquise Chris, Dragan Bender. Tyson Chandler's obviously not a back-to-the-basket scorer, never really has been. DeAndre Ayton can catch the ball, and right here, he's already a threat because if he faces up, this is a shot he can make. He's a threat to get this and rip through, go baseline, and finish with a dunk. And right here, he's going to get right back into a post-up, a spin back, and then it's going to finish. That's something that Phoenix really hasn't seen in their organization in a long time. There's not really anybody on the team right now with this type of footwork in the post. And his combination of size, athleticism, and touch is really going to make that a problem. So that kind of puts up where I think the starting lineup would be right now. I think starting DeAndre Ayton would make more sense over Tyson Chandler because essentially what would happen is Chandler would start and come right out immediately. I don't really see the purpose of that when you have a potential franchise-changing center like DeAndre Ayton on the roster. So free agency-wise, Alfred Payton and Alex Len are both going to be free agents. The Suns don't seem like they're going to be interested in giving them offers at all, which I think makes sense because in doing so, you do have the cap room that's available. Now, in terms of opening up more space, I think the first move that the Suns are going to have to make is to get rid of Allen Williams and allow him to become a free agent. By doing that, it's going to get the cap space up a little bit more. So it's a non-guaranteed contract, so they don't have to pay him that. I think Tyler Ulis is a guy that you have to keep, and right now I would have him as, backup potential starter depending on who else they get in free agency, which we'll get to. Devon Reed, I really think he could be a solid kind of defensive first type of guy, but that's going to be up to them. The contract would only be about $1.3 million if they did end up getting him. I think Okobo, the second-round pick, is a guy who was kind of slipped in the draft. I thought he could have been a potential late 20s, maybe mid-20s pick. Really talented point guard out of France. I think he's going to be coming over this year, so we don't really know what he would be getting, but let's just say he gets 800,000. That would also go against the cap if they signed him early, which they don't necessarily have to do, but the cap hole is going to be there if they need to use it. So I would pencil Okobo in as, third string point guard, again, depending on which one of these guys starts. In terms of the two-way guys, House did start a couple games for them last year. I don't really think he's in the long-term plans, but giving him a contract, I don't know if that would be necessary or not, because if you look at the roster they have right now, they have bodies, they have guys to play. So at this point, I would say they would probably let all of these guys walk, including Shaquille Harrison, who they did sign to a contract at the end of the year last year. I wouldn't be in too much of a hurry to necessarily pick him up, but if there was anybody on this list who I think would stay, it would be Shaquille Harrison. So let's just say they keep him as well. And then let's say they let Devon Reed and Daniel House go. So at this point, they'd be sitting at around, $17 million in cap space, give or take, kind of depending on some other rules within the situation here. So now if you're looking at that with about $17 million, you have to wonder who you can possibly get. So, the areas where I really think they need to improve is obviously that point guard spot. So some of the guys to look at, I think, would be Marcus Smart, Corey Joseph, Avery Bradley, Ian Clark, and Seth Curry. Number one on this list, I think, for them, based on what they would be paying, I think Avery Bradley would be a very smart choice. I think with the $17 million in open cap space, you could give him a solid offer. I think he might be worth, 18 to 20 possibly, depending on the team need. But the reason I see him fitting in with the Suns is really because you have a playmaking off guard in Devin Booker. Avery Bradley's really more of a shooting guard than he is a point guard, but he's a guy that's an excellent defender, can make knockdown open jump shots, and can be of value there. So let's say they get Avery Bradley here, and let's say they get him for $17 million. And by doing that, you could slide him right in to that point guard spot right there. Even though, he was kind of an experiment when he was in a two-guard system in Boston. I still don't really think he's a natural point guard, but he's a guy that if you're looking to compete, he can defend both guard spots, one of the best on-ball defenders in the league, and like I said, a pretty good shooter when he has time and space. So at this point, they wouldn't be making any big moves after they got a guy like Avery Bradley. I do think Marcus Smart would be a guy who could fit. He's a really underrated point guard that can make plays for other guys. I'm not sure yet what the price is going to be on him, and Boston also has the option to match. In terms of the exceptions, they still have this $8 million mid-level exception if they were to avoid going too deep into their pockets to get a guy like Avery Bradley, and the biannual exception. At this point, they'd probably be weakest in the post, I would say. Josh Jackson would be playing a small ball four here, which I think is going to be best for him, but you really would be looking at getting another big to play either of those spots, especially with Tyson Chandler's age and, kind of health issues throughout his career. So guys that I think you could target with this $8 million are not really any of these guys. These would be more guys that they could target, and there's been rumors about. Aaron Gordon is a guy they could go after, offer a max if they were to make some other moves. You have Jared Dudley's contract and Tyson Chandler's, which if somehow they could figure out how to move that, you could offer that about $25 million to Aaron Gordon right here. You could also do the same with Capella, but my worry with that is if you get a guy like Capella, how are you going to play him with DeAndre Ayton when you consider Ayton's biggest struggles came defensively when he had to guard smaller guys at Arizona? So if I'm the Suns looking to fill that post spot with only the mid-level exception at a little over $8 million, you could look at guys like Amir Johnson, Lucas Nogueira, Mike Scott, Anthony Tolliver. Of all these guys, I think Tolliver would be a very good fit as a guy who proved he could be a competent stretch four, stretch five last year. Shot about 40% from three. He brings a lot of experience. Really would be a good mentor in the locker room, and I think he's going to get a lot of interest. So he might demand higher than the $8 million. But as a guy who's been through the league, if it's a one-year deal, I think if there's not a lot of offers coming, this is possibly something that could work. So if they were to get Tolliver, and let's say they just pay him the $8 million, then by doing so, they would be able to put him into one of these post spots. And at this point, I think this is a team that's not necessarily ready to make a bunch of noise in the Western Conference, but I think this is a team that could be anywhere from we're looking at maybe like 7 to 11 range in the West if we see guys like Josh Jackson make that progress, because you already got superior offensive talents in Devin Booker. I think DeAndre Ayton is going to be a guy who is going to be getting you around, 16 to 18 a night, given the right situation. Mikal Bridges, not sure if he'll actually end up starting or not, but I do believe the floor spacing would look a lot better with him there. Bring T.J. Warren off the bench. Haven't really talked about him yet, but Brandon Knight is a guy who I think is going to be used as a potential trade piece. And if not, it's a veteran guy that can score, make shots. He can do a lot for you. If they can end up getting a point guard or a guard like Avery Bradley or Marcus Smart, I think Brandon Knight's a guy that you feel comfortable growing with this young team, leading them, and then once a deadline comes, possibly trading him. And then at this point, they would have, I think, about 16 guys. Would need to cut somebody before they get to the regular season. And I would assume if this were the makeup of the roster, Shaquille Harrison might be that guy. But you could always, again, get him on a two-way contract, or maybe have a Kobo on a two-way contract and see what he does. Let him kind of learn the American game a little bit before transitioning him. And I do think this is a team that in a couple years gets some more top draft picks, potentially make some moves to add picks, because they do have the Bucks pick from that Bledsoe trade. I think this is a team that could be a problem in 3 or 4 years.